Hi folks, welcome to Hat Friday. That's just so we remember that there is a Friday in the week during the lockdown. Welcome to the I Write Radio podcast stroke videocast. Stuart Lockhead with his beanie. What do you call that hat, Jimmy?
It's a Paul Smith hat, mate. I don't care what you call it.
He's
Other
got a
than
beanie.
Expensive.
With Paul Smith's hat that you probably nicked in the pub or something then.
No, excuse me. Harvey Nicks, mate.
Oh, he's a designer, is he?
I'm ready to go out hunting, look.
What are you going to hunt?
Be very quiet, I'm hunting rabbit.
Something like that, hunting rabbits.
Okay.
All the way up, I can still see.
So, seeing as it's Friday, I think we'll go with a presser because that'll tie us into one of the other changes in direction that's happened today. The woman, Colonel Ruth, has been down south on all the radio stations, making sure politics is not dead.
Norrie, do you think we should make a public announcement about the possible break in transmission due to high winds?
It shouldn't affect us. And I'm not that flatulent today, to be honest. Okay, guys, let's go with today's presser. Let's begin with that. What did we think? Obviously, everybody was going to be asking her questions about the route map and trying to make it sound as complicated as they possibly could after the stay alert message from Westminster. Jimmy?
Well, I was a bit surprised, if I'm honest, mate. After all three opposition parties calling for Jean Freeman's resignation last night, none of them went there this morning or this afternoon. They've clearly decided to roll back on that on the basis that whatever Jean Freeman done, Matt Hancock done with bloody bells on in England.
I was expecting one of them to ask that question. It was asked yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
The question was asked of her yesterday.
There's stuff on the route map. I thought, to be honest, I thought they were okay. They were asking genuine questions. The route map itself, well, we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. It's entertained me hugely that you've had quite a lot of unionists like Ruth Davidson telling you that the route map that the Scottish government has produced is exactly the same as what Boris produced a couple of weeks ago. Because they make themselves look remarkably stupid. Boris basically went, blah, 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 blah. I'm not sure what I'm doing. And the Scottish government have produced pages and pages of information. So it's really not the same as Boris's at all, is it?
I think most noticeable thing about it was she actually pointed out today that the way they've structured this is to issue the route map with time for people to ask specific questions, because the big hoo-ha yesterday was about you can't travel more than 5 miles to visit your granny. And she said, no, that's not written in stone. And of course they pushed it. Are the police going to arrest everybody that travels more than 5 miles? And you could see her shaking her head going, are you stupid? I've already answered this question. Mm-hmm. How many times do you want me to answer it? So the idea seems to be, we'll put it out there, we'll let the press have all their stupid wee digs at it, and, we'll be specific where we need to be, and have 2 weeks, a week now, to do that in. So they're using it as a way to clear up the questions, which seems quite sensible.
It does. It's dotting the I's and crossing the T's before we actually go into each specific phase, so that the problems that people see we might have going into each specific phase are mostly ironed out before that phase kicks in. It seems like an eminently sensible way to do it, but far be it from me to suggest that the Scottish press don't understand eminently sensible.
Got to bear in mind that the Scottish government issued the framework of what this phased lockdown easing would be like about 2 weeks ago. They had 20, and they asked for responses from the public. They had 20,000 responses from the public. There is another paper report was published yesterday, as well as this, of the public responses and the various questions the public had. So they've already done an enormous feedback on before they even published this,
Stuart,
which they obviously didn't do in England.
Stuart,
And
imagine
then
a government
published, stuck up a graphic of the phases, the Scottish phases, alongside the graphic of what Boris managed to produce. It's like Boris is like a kindergarten wash your hands picture above the sink, and the Scottish one is in detail and comprehensive. I mean, there's no comparison.
Jimmy.
No, there's not. And just imagine a government that actually asks its citizens, what do you think of this? And then refines their plans based on the feedback from their citizens. That sounds to me like a progressive government that plans to get things right, which is the exact opposite of what we've seen from Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, and all the wee hangers-on.
I think the smart thing that the Scottish government's done here is to give themselves time. Mm-hmm. They've given themselves a week to iron out the things that they didn't foresee, that, you know, the unforeseen consequences of decisions. Instead of implementing it and then trying to iron it out when it's too late, they've given themselves space for the public to come back and say, hey, wait a minute, my granny lives 6 miles away. How can I not go and see her? But my sister, who lives 4 miles away, can. You know,
they've also taken far more input from like teachers groups, trade unions, local government. They're taking input from all over the place. It's not the dictatorial stance that's been taken by London. It's actually a far more collegiate plan. And the good thing about that is that you get your local government and your trade unions willing to actually be helpful rather than go looking for problems. The only folk looking for problems are the media, who are desperate to find something to trip the Scottish government on because they seem to see that as their primary purpose in life.
Well, look, it was quite a different press briefing, in the sense that the First Minister already predicted the question she was going to be asked. The first thing she emphasised was, she reminded us, in 2 places, she reminded us that they're using different messaging in Scotland. They don't do TTT, which for goodness, don't know what that means in England. Test, trace, and track. It's test, trace, isolate, and support. But anyway, they've got a nice snappy slogan in Scotland, and it's called Test and Protect. She also anticipated the question about the 5 mile, possibly the 5 mile limit. She said in her introduction that it is not a 5 mile limit. She also mentioned in her introduction the question of how far you could go to visit your granny. And she explained it in a very sensible way about, well, if you're going to go all that far, are you going to go into her house and perhaps contaminate the house and give your granny and kill her with a virus? So she covered all that.
Let's have a quick look at the Ruth Davidson clip.
Well, before you get there, sorry, I've got a couple of other things to mean if you're going to go there.
Yeah, we've got all day.
She also used an interesting expression. Instead of using the term common sense, she deliberately avoided using that. I don't know if you noticed. She said she could have used common sense. She said, no, I want you to use good judgment. So there was another very deliberate. She plans these things very well, or somebody does. And then she defined really what was the distance you could go to visit your granny if you can get there and back in 1 day and not use the toilet.
Well, the reason I wanted to show the clip is she basically addressed all the points that Ruth Davidson made on GMB this morning, Good Morning Britain. So I'll play that clip for you now, guys, if I can find it. It's there somewhere. Oh, I think I've lost it.
You'd be doing the world a service if you'd lost Ruth Davidson, mate.
No. I'll try to find it. Bit of a disaster. No, I've lost it.
Ugh, well,
Look, I have heard that there's a rumour going around that the reason that Ruth Davidson popped up on television this morning is that she's bored with her baby. She's got a year and a half of having a baby, and she's bored with her new toy. She'll want something else to keep her busy now.
Well, I mean, she went on and basically tried to pick apart. Basically, what she tried to do was sow confusion. And in sowing that confusion, answered her own question. It was really quite bizarre. But obviously, they've been told they need to start politicking. They need to start attacking Sturgeon because she's making Boris, well, I was going to say she's making Boris look like an idiot, but she's not. She's actually driven him into hiding.
mm-hmm. Well, let's be clear. Ruth clearly had a phone call for Conservative Central Office. Jackson's just not cutting it. Help us, please help us, because it's only the last 2 or 3 days that she's really been bumping her gums. Whether she's sick of being a mummy or no, well, I wouldn't have put it past her, to be honest. She does like new, shiny things. She always has. But clearly, London has asked for her help. And I'm not surprised that she's jumped, because I never really believed that she was going to retire from frontline politics. It does beg the question, what happens to Jackson? Is he going to get handed a couple of paintings and asked to disappear into the background again?
Possibly. Have you heard about the one about Boris? Apparently, they decided, Boris and his team in number 10 decided that people didn't understand what 2 meters distance was. So they put out a graphic explaining it. It was the equivalent of 3 fridges.
Well, somebody's got a sense of humour. The best description I've heard was, well, apocryphal. A wee Glasgow granny who said 6 feet apart or 6 feet under.
Aye, that was a good one.
I thought that kind of got there. By the way, guys, I have found that clip.
Okay.
You want to go for that again?
Yeah, give me a second. Here we go.
Well, I think that whatever inquiries we have after we're out of the back of this, there's going to be so many lessons that we have to learn. And I think, so for example, you're talking about the situation in England where some people were put into care homes without having tested negative first as they were discharged from hospital. We've had the same thing in Scotland, but we've had it to a greater degree. So we had the Scottish Government actively buying beds in advance in care homes, spending money, telling care home operators, we want to empty our hospitals, and we're going to do it without testing or having a negative test back of the people that we're putting in there. So in terms of the agency of government, actually physically making the decision to put people that may or may not be infected into an enclosed environment of incredibly vulnerable people. And like I say, our care home death rate in Scotland is more than double that of England. So I think there needs to be an inquiry in each part of the UK because it's health and health has devolved. Wales is doing it differently, Scotland's doing it differently, England's doing it differently. But I think we also need to have a much broader inquiry across the whole of the United Kingdom of what do we need to learn if this, God help us, comes back again or something like it.
That was her sort of pop at the care home situation. But she came out with very soon to be proved wrong, I would imagine, double the number of deaths in Scotland. This is our pop at the roadmap.
I think it's something we've got to guard against, and the way in which we can do that best, I think, is for the governments, all governments, to show their workings. So some of the things in these plans, the roadmaps, don't make a lot of sense to people. They don't see why it is. I'll give you an example. I have an 18-month-old son. From phase 1, which starts on Thursday, he's allowed to go into his childminder's house, but he's not allowed to go into his granny's house until phase 3. Now, that's the sort of thing that people might not understand why that is, or his auntie's house or something like that. So I think the government has to explain why they're saying that. Why can you go and meet somebody and have a picnic in the local park, but you're not allowed to drive 5 miles to go to a different park to see your friend because they live next to that park? You know, so it's how do you show people why You don't want an area that maybe doesn't have infection to have people from an area that does have a higher infection rate to come into it. So I think with a bit more explanation, people will be much more on board if they can understand why certain things are being said. But I think if it's just these are the rules and there's no explanation, then I think that you do worry that it might break down.
That's just a stream of nonsense, mate. That was like reading the first couple of pages of Ulysses. That's just her taking one deep breath, and fair play, she's very good at it. And let's be honest, a lot of the Tory front bench have copied that talent from her, but she took one deep breath and just chucked out as many words as came into her head in a couple of minutes. None of that made sense.
She probably had a tick list of mentioned that, and that.
Well, she came out with twice as many deaths. Now, the unexplained deaths in England are on a par with the unexplained deaths everywhere. They've just chosen not to admit that a huge chunk of them are coronavirus. I mean,
well, look, I thought you said, Norrie, earlier on before we come on that the First Minister had refuted this stuff already.
She did at the presser. Basically, every point that Ruth Davidson brought up this morning, she hit. She also did it on GMB after the Ruth Davidson interviews.
What, the First Minister was in GMB?
Yeah.
She was on to Lorraine Kelly after it, I believe.
Well, maybe it was Lorraine Kelly then. I'm sure I've got it here somewhere. But the point I'm making about Ruth is Ruth explained why people want to travel. She asked the question and it wasn't clear. And what they have to do is say, didn't travel, because if you're traveling from an infected area to a low infection area, you could be taking infection and vice versa.
Aye.
So,
you're right, mate. She went on telly to sow discord, to muddy the waters, because clearly the Scottish roadmap, their first call was to say it was just the same as Boris's. Then they realised that was making them look remarkably stupid, because even the media were pointing out to them that it was far more detailed and far more nuanced. So now they're out there in the instruction, and it's gone to Ruth rather than Jackson, because Jackson's not got the ability, is to get out there and muddy the waters, make the Scottish government look stupid. Fair play, she can open her mouth and let her belly rumble. She's got a massive one of them, but she's actually not going to succeed in that, because this route map it's the best piece of work I've seen other than New York City's, put it that way.
Well, it is a good thing. I mean, I went into the route map in detail, all 45 pages, and I also looked at the feedback report from 20,000 of the Scottish public before it was the route map was published. No, it's been very good. I've just remembered there's another expression that she's used. They definitely had a go at being different from England. And who was it? The guy from the Financial Times at the presser asked about, the question is irrelevant, but he asked about stage 4. Now, they're not using the term stage in Scotland, they're using the term phase. See the subtle differences in the message. It's phases in Scotland, it's stages in England, it's common sense in England, it's good judgment in Scotland, it's protect. What's it? Test and protect in Scotland. Goodness knows what it is in England. 4 T's and an I.
Be alert.
Be alert, aye.
I do think that there's an opportunity here for her to score some good points, simply by saying, when people question, oh, you're just following Boris, whatever, she can turn around and be quite magnanimous and say, well, look, England are in front of us. That gives us the opportunity to avoid the pitfalls that have opened up for the English government. And we'd like to thank them for giving us that opportunity. I mean, you can be magnanimous and not be nasty. And simply, your criticism is really about timing then, not content. And when they ask you why you're doing it differently, you say, well, it didn't work out too well initially in England, so we felt we should take a different path.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned, though, that they seem quite open to following Priti Patel's plan for the quarantine and thing that Priti Patel is going to be announcing this afternoon. Genuinely, the only reason I can see for Britain introducing a 14-day quarantine period for people coming into Britain now is that they fully expect a second stage of this to kick in very soon. And it might be worse, even worse than the first phase.
Well, I think that's a point I wanted to make, because the more I look around and take information from other scientific sources, the more the likelihood of a second phase coming. It's coming up and up and up. The First Minister herself said the virus the second wave could be even worse than the first one, and it's not necessarily gone.
Mm. As I say, that whole quarantine thing, it's the only reason that they can be bringing this in now, is that they're fully expecting a second wave, and that second wave is this maybe European exceptionalism kicking in, because Europe got caught with its pants down for the first wave. Are they maybe thinking that Africa, Asia, South America, where they're getting battered now, and it's only going to get worse, they're worried that people are going to come from these places and bring it back here, so they're just going to put up to a Donald and build a wall?
My understanding of this is there's a kind of crossover point. If you think of it as a graph, as we drop down the number of infections, the possibility from an infection from elsewhere rises.
Mm-hmm.
So the percentage chance, the risk rises, the infection can be brought in. Mm-hmm. But the argument for not quarantining back in April was effectively that we had so much coronavirus here anyway, the number of infected people coming in wouldn't have made a difference. Now it might be getting to the point where they feel that the risk of people coming in with the virus is big enough that quarantine's worthwhile. Do I agree with it? I have to say I'm not sure, because I don't really understand.
Well, look, did you see Question Time last night? And the former Prime Minister of Denmark was on Question Time.
Oh, no, Stephen Kinnock's missus again. She's turned into the new Nigel Farage, man. She's never off that, the BBC.
What, she's Stephen Kinnock's, what?
She's married to Neil Kinnock's laddie.
Anyway, she was explaining that they, in Denmark, they had half done up, their lockdown was only 4 weeks. They went into it a week earlier than the UK. And she did also say that they were, they had a much stricter rule about quarantine. They were sticking people into hotels in Denmark who came back for their 14 days. They were only self-isolating. So the idea in the UK at the moment is that they'll be self-isolating. And the Chief Constable of Scotland was asked about that at the press briefing just now. And he said he didn't want to be pigeonholed, to say. He didn't want to be pinned down about that, because he hadn't heard what was being announced in London. But one last thing about him, he was asked about whether he would putting up roadblocks to stop people to find out if they were going to visit their granny in Inverness from Glasgow. And he said no.
He made the point. He didn't close the English border. Why would he do that? I kind of, the other string to this is the point you brought up, which I kind of poo-pooed yesterday, and I apologize because I think I was wrong. That's about the asymptomatic spread. There was a piece on Channel 4 that they'd gone into a care home and tested everybody. I take it was for the program. And they found that something like 20% of the people in there, that was part of the staff and part of the residents, were asymptomatic, but carried the virus. So,
this was 6 care homes in a particular borough in London, wasn't it? They realised they had a problem and done the kind of testing that the World Health Organization would say is the absolute gold standard, and that they tested everybody.
And I didn't realize that the asymptomatic carriers were so high. And that is a problem going down the line, unless they get a test where you can identify asymptomatic carriers that's sort of easier than the one they're doing at the moment. Because it'll be.
Is anybody concerned like me that all this nonsense about the obfuscation that's going on around tests, the tests that, this test, that test, you can buy a test here, you can try a test there. And we're still at the stage where the actual test that they're doing in hospital is only about 70% effective. So why are they babbling to us on the news about
Oh, I'm sorry, Jimmy.
tests that you can go and buy?
Not according to the health guy. The Scottish health guy reckons it's 93%.
I heard him say that the other day, but everywhere else on the planet is saying it's nowhere near 90%.
Well, he seemed pretty calm. That's not the first time he said it.
Come on, mate. He's another one that bought his professorship. It's not like he's a real professor.
I thought the First Minister was quite interesting today about tests. She was asked, one of the media love to ask about numbers and tests. How many tests have they done? How many can they do? You know, they love asking these stupid questions. When she was asked about the new test or the test and protect system that's going to come in with a phase 1 of the lockdown easing, she explained in some detail that although their capacity, they've got 15,500 test capacity expected when they start this, they may not need all the capacity. They may not need all. They're planning to have 2,000 contact tracers. They've already got 600 that do the job anyway for ordinary flu, E. coli, or whatever they've got, and they're retrained anyway. 660, I think. But she said they may not need all the 2,000 people to contact and trace. It's completely variable.
Yeah, I mean, she's been saying since the start that the system is going to have to be flexible, which is I mean, it was a clever way to put it, I thought, politically. I mean, it might well be the truth as well, but politically, you can say, oh, we didn't need that many. We needed more, so we upped it more. She's played a blinder.
Well, she's getting she's, like you say, mate, she's getting a clear and open example from down south of how not to play it every day right in front of her.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got your health secretary. Well, you've got Boris back in hiding again after Wednesday. You've got Matt Hancock, who refuses to answer questions about the app because the app's just clearly a pile of shite. They're going to have to go, if they want to use an app, they're going to have to go cap in hand to Google and Apple, where they probably should have went in the first place and asked to use their one.
All right.
The contact tracing was examined in some TV show last night in some detail. And contact tracing, I think it was Philippa Whiteford on Newsnight last night was explaining how it's been around for decades. It's been used, E. coli, whatever, any food, usually it's food infections, and they have to go and find out who's been in and out of the butchers and all the rest of it. That's been going around for 30 years. Loads of experience.
The wife and I had a chat about this on the basis of how do you identify somebody you don't know you've been in contact with? But when do you ever spend 15 minutes within a meter of somebody you don't know?
Well, unless you go to the pub.
And in the pub, I mean, you'll know somebody in the pub almost definitely. I would say 99% of the time, who will know somebody else that perhaps you don't know, who will know the barman, who will know a big chunk of the people. So I was trying to work out how you do it. And when you think about it logically, it's not that difficult.
Doesn't need an app.
Well, they talk about 6 things of separation from everybody in the world.
Mm.
But if you're standing in a pub and there's 3 people you know and 12 people you don't know, the chances are one of the people you know will know 1 or 2 of the people you don't know.
Unless it's the Weatherspoons.
But particularly for this thing.
Weatherspoons.
Particularly the contact tracing for this thing, mate. The pubs have been shut. Cinemas and theatres have been shut. The only time you're spending more than 15 minutes within a metre of somebody would be if you're daft enough to jump on a tube train or sit on a bus on a seat behind somebody. Aye,
true. Anyway.
I'd like to point out this, I was examining this, the phases and at what point pubs and restaurants can open normally, but there's I think it's phase 3, certain pubs and restaurants with phase 2, I think you'll be able to open your beer gardens. Probably phase 3, you can correct me if I'm wrong, phase 3, pubs and restaurants will be able to open up with certain restrictions, and they're talking about unfortunately for most of the drinking public, Wetherspoon's already geared up for this, where you sit at your table and order using an app.
Well, they can went through. Most pubs when they open, mate. Phase 3, depending on the restrictions that they introduce, that'll either let pubs open or it'll shut pubs.
Or there'll be serious
For good.
drinking.
Well, but it just seems to me that Wetherspoons could, in the end, do really well out of this. It's very, very sad news.
Well, I'm thinking bowler's rest here. You go in the back door and pick up your pint, go out the front door and stand social distance in the street. As far as
there'll actually have to be some joined up thinking. The worrying thing for us three is that we live in a city where the city council hasn't got a clue. Their main priority throughout this thing has been how do we shut more roads and provide more cycling provision. That's all they've been interested in. They should already have stated that outside areas will not be charged for licensing, and as long as you didn't rip the piss out of it, you will be able to open and put your tables outside. Because there's hundreds of pubs around Leith that could put half a dozen tables outside, 24 chairs, and actually operate. The problem is Edinburgh City Council would normally charge them about £1,500 to do that.
Well,
that all has to be set aside immediately.
There's a pub in Leith at the moment doing Kyriot.
Mm-hmm.
Take your bucket round.
The one at the end of my street is.
Right.
There's a few doing it now.
We've kind of done the coronavirus to death today, guys. Trump.
He's a horse, but
Boris is away to visit Trump, apparently.
Yes. Didn't the First Minister do well there as well? She didn't need to answer, did she? She was asked about, what did you think about Boris going to visit Trump? Well, I haven't heard about this, but I think Trump should be more responsible.
Well, talking about Trump being more responsible, I notice 8 months out from an election, he's already his polling must be catastrophic. His polling in the states that he needs to win must be absolutely down the pan, because 8 months out for the election, he's already talking about voter fraud. So clearly, he's expecting to lose and then take it to court.
Well, I tell you, for a free democratic country, there's an awful lot of people disenfranchised in America. These Republican states and the barriers they're thrown up, basically to the Democratic base, i.e. black people, to the barriers are put in between them and the voting booth are unbelievable. It's unconscionable.
It's absolutely ludicrous, mate. And the fact that we're tying ourselves to a failed state, or it begins to look more and more like a failed state. The leader of the free world, Christ, they couldn't find her. No, I didn't want to go there. What they have become is a parody of what they were only 10 years ago. When in Obama's first term, you were looking at the whole world was looking at America for leadership and thinking, oh my God, this is the way forward. And within a decade, we're reduced to the ridiculous sight of a clown, a poorly educated clown, running around telling people to inject themselves with, take this, have a go at that drug, because Ken, what I've read online that it works. And he's busily telling world-renowned doctors that they don't know what they're talking about and they should watch a bit more of Fox News.
Wouldn't it be great if Boris was asymptomatic and went across and shook his hand?
Oh my God, wouldn't it just?
Do you think Trump will actually even let him into the White House if he goes, having had coronavirus? Do you think that will happen?
They'll stone it in the garden, mate.
200 yards apart with megaphones.
Might be the one and only time you see Donald wearing a mask, because he seems to have got this whole machismo thing. I seen him visiting a Ford plant yesterday, and absolutely everybody in the Ford plant was wearing masks, because that's the regulations that Ford have set for their plant to reopen. The only person not wearing a mask, Donald, because he's too tough to get the virus, isn't he?
Apparently, he wore a mask off camera. I think there's
Aye.
a picture.
Aye, that smells like what? No, I'm not going to go there.
So, anybody catch anything else?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
I will have a laugh.
Well, on you go, Jimmy. You go
No,
first.
Stuart, on you go, son. On you go.
I thought it was noticeable today at today's press conference that the Chief Constable of Scotland was there. And he was asked a question about a photograph from the day before yesterday of Portobello Beach. For people who don't know Edinburgh, Portobello Beach is less than 2 miles from the city centre. Unlike most cities the size of Edinburgh, we've got a beach right. You could say it's the equivalent of a park with a bit of water beside it. And so the rules for going to a park during this emergency are really the same for going to a beach. Anyway, the photograph was shown 2 days ago about it being crowded. What was really interesting about the Chief Constable totally defended the people that went to the beach. He had some officers down there trying to get people to leave, to not sit there on the sand, but he more or less said, look, people walk up and down on the promenade. People walk up and down on the beach, and let's be honest, if the tide's out, there's plenty of room for people to walk around on the beach.
Hence the name Promenade.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think I noticed at the time that things were in social media, and there was only 2 or 3 camera people, 2 or 3 sources for what looked like a crowded picture of Portobello. And there's a professional cameraman explaining that what they were using were long lenses.
That's bullshit, mate. The beach was heaving. I've seen other photos other than the one that the papers have been using. The beach was rammed, and it shouldn't have been. There's no danger it was done with a long lens to make it look worse than it was. It was horrific.
Well, I'm not making excuses for that. I'm simply saying that what was noticeable was the Chief Constable was defending it.
Right, what he's really defending. What he's really
would have thought he'd be putting his foot down.
No, what he's really defending is the fact that his officers fined nobody. They asked people to leave. His officers were very even-handed, apparently, but nobody was fined. And loads of people really should have been given the proximity and how many of them were there.
Yeah, but look, Jimmy, think about it. You've got an operational job to deal with. It's fine if you're talking about Longniddry bench. You can just close the car parks and put a police car just driving up and down the road there, and you'll keep the beaches clear. Portobello Beach doesn't have one car park. People come from all directions to go to that beach. How many entrances, how many police are you going to need to stop them going there?
You didn't. You just go up to people and say, listen, you're breaking the law at this point. I'm going to take a donder along the beach. When I come back in 10 minutes, didn't be here.
You mean like they do on a Saturday night? Right, Jimmy, you've got a funny, I hope.
No, it's not really a funny, mate. It's just a delicious irony of watching idiots, Tory MPs and Brexit party leaders all over Sky News, which is basically Britain's attempt at Fox News, isn't it? Desperately complaining that the French aren't doing enough to stop asylum seekers trying to get to Britain, and absolutely insisting that we need a deal so that the French will do more. You'll forgive me, Nigel, and all your daft wee Tory hangers on, but we've had a deal for 40 years, and you guys chucked it down the lavy a couple of years back. So asking the French to help them now, I'm actually surprised the French aren't towing them into British waters and laughing at us.
Well, Farage was apparently accusing them of doing basically that. There was a French gunboat apparently out in the middle of the Channel assisting refugees coming from France to Britain onto border force boats, according to Farage.
Aye, well, as I say, mate, I wouldn't blame the French for doing that and laughing at people like Nigel Farage as they'd done it. But the reality is, 157 were lifted yesterday in the Channel. The Brits lifted 57 of them. The French lifted 100 and took them back to France. So if that's not the French working hard enough and the wonderful British doing a great job, I'd suggest that the British border patrol boats.
He wants to watch what he
By idiot.
says, because the mayor of Cali would love nothing better than to tear down the fences.
I know.
Just let them run out of Cali into the channel.
Well,
And
it saved Cali
remember,
an
you can
absolute
swim
fortune.
the channel. Well, you're laughing, but
Yes, of course they swim the channel. Yeah, okay.
Well, as I say, mate, it's just ludicrous to me that you've got Tory MPs and Brexit Party MPs asking for a deal to be sorted out for the French to make more help. You had a deal and you tossed it down the toilet.
exactly. Okay, guys, we'll call it a day at that. Thanks to me, Hunt. Thanks, Stuart Lockhead. I'm Norris Stewart. Thanks for listening and watching, folks. Bit of a long
Cheerio.
day. We'll take tomorrow off, I think, lads, eh?
Yeah.
I might go to the beach.
No, you're not allowed to the beach, mate. You can walk, but you can't sit down. So we'll catch up with you on Sunday, folks. Cheers for now.